Now on to the banking sector, and India has set its sights on becoming a $5 trillion economy by 2025. Now that's according to the country's Prime Minister, Narendra Modi, speaking at the opening session of the World Economic Forum here in Davos. That was yesterday. Mr. Modi saying India is removing the red tape and laying out the red carpet in an attempt to attract foreign investment and kickstart growth in an economy which is forecast to expand at a 3-year low. Well, let's speak now to one of India's biggest banks. Joining us is the ICICI CEO. She is Chanda Kochhar. And also with me, I welcome Haslinda Amin, who I think it's your first, no, Davos?
Yes, it is. And it's very cold.
It is very cold. Haslinda also did a great job. Chanda Kochhar, thank you so much for joining us here on Bloomberg TV. Look, the Indian banking sector has a lot of things to scream about in a good way, but also huge issues. What is your main priority and what's your biggest concern for the Indian banking sector as a whole?
Well, first of all, as you said, that, a lot of excitement in the Indian banking sector. The entire retail consumer side is growing so very well. Technology is making, so many innovations and the Indian banking sector is actually setting the next practices as far as payment systems and use of technology is concerned. But, as you spoke about, what is it over and above that we focus on? Well, I think, the corporate debt of the large corporates, I think that needs to get worked out over a period. So that's the other thing that the banks focus on. But overall, a lot of excitement, good growth in credit, and a huge amount of technological innovation.
Do you worry about capital buffers? Do you worry about profitability? There's still a lot of bad loans and things that the Indian government hasn't quite been able to keep a handle on.
No, I think, we have to keep in mind the perspective about why some of the bad loans arose. I think these were projects that were being built when the economy was growing at 10 and 11% and was expected to continue to grow at 12%. And then came the slowdown in growth, then came the fall in commodity prices, then came some delays in project implementation. So I think every economy goes through some period of this kind. What is important for all of us is now not to just focus about recognition of bad loans. I think what's important is to focus on resolution and recovery. And that's what the Indian banking system is focusing on. And I think there's a huge amount of ecosystem that's getting created to make that happen.
The cleanup is happening, but we're talking about $210 billion of bad debt, among the worst in the world. Have you been happy with the progress made so far?
I think, as I said, on the ecosystem, a lot of progress is being made. The regulatory guidelines, which kind of lay out how the resolution and recovery can be done. But the most important thing is the IBC, the bankruptcy code, which then allows you to take companies to the national tribunal, what we call the NCLT, and do a recovery and a resolution process under the judicial umbrella. And I think, this year is going to be a watershed year in terms of cases getting resolved through NCLT. The positive is that NCLT in a way lays down certain timelines. So it's a time-bound decision that ought to come. It gives a judicial cover so the banks feel more confident to take those decisions. Well, we haven't really gone the full round for any case to complete the recovery around NCLT, but we'll watch that space. But I'm very optimistic that this will work very well.
Optimistic watershed year, and Moody's came out to say that perhaps we'll see the peak of bad debt this year. Are you as upbeat as Moody's? That seems pretty, I guess, optimistic. Too optimistic for me where I'm seated.
Well, I would put it like this, that in terms of recognition, I think, pretty much that people know what the size of the stressed asset is. And therefore, what is going to be the success is how fast we achieve the resolution and recovery and what are the actual underlying values that we get as we do the resolution and recovery. So, yes, as I said, we haven't really yet completed the cycle for any large case. But given the momentum, given the direction, I feel optimistic.
How much it is impairing the ability to lend?
No, if you look at the banking sector, it also continues to lend because, as I said, the consumer side of the business is growing, 17-18%, between 15 and 18%. For banks like us, it's growing at more than 20%. So I think a lot of banks have the capital adequacy, the liquidity to continue to grow. Well, some some banks would feel the pinch, as of now. But I think overall, still the banking system is, for the consumer side, growing at 15 to 18%.
I mean, you've explained it very well and gone through, the concerns that investors have on the Indian banking sector. If there's one thing you could fix in the next 6 months that would make your life a lot easier, what would it be?
Well, I think the one thing that I would focus on to fix is the resolution process. But, I must admit, or I must add, that it does not mean that should weigh the banking sector down. And it is not weighing the banking sector down. On the other hand is the entire growth, the consumer side, the technology side, which is all, creating the growth, the excitement, and so on.
Prime Minister Modi talked about building India into a $5 trillion economy by 2025. Essentially, that means a 10% growth till then. Is that too optimistic? Can he achieve that target? What will it take, given that he's not even creating enough jobs at this point in time?
Well, if you look at the economy currently, we are already seeing the economy moving up. Even the second half of this financial year, which we are going through currently, we expect the growth rates to be 7% or so. What is doing well? Again, if you look at the high frequency indicators on the ground, on the consumption side, the consumption of non-durables, the two-wheeler sales, the car sales, they are all kind of continuing to grow, and therefore the personal credit continues to grow. On the industrial side as well, now the capacity utilizations of sectors like steel, cement have all, inched up quite a bit. The credit to industry, which had turned negative at certain point in time, has now turned positive. The PMI index has gone up. So I think there is on both sides, the indications of growth are already taking place.
That is what's going well. What's not going too well is inflation. It's still far from the target. Where do you see rates headed?
Well, I think inflation, while it is going up and it will go up, but I think it will still remain within the RBI acceptable levels of 4 plus 2% or minus 2%. So I think it will still, even in this year, remain in that range. And therefore, the reduction in interest rate cycle, I think, has stopped now. And maybe,
do you see an increase anytime soon?
Not soon, but I think over a period, increase would take place. But I don't expect it to happen as we speak or happen, very, very soon. But yes, I think we would get prepared, for an increase over a period.
Would that cycle have happened by the time we speak to you next year in Davos?
Next year, 12 months in today's day and age is a very, very long time.
Very diplomatic answer without giving us a clear answer. What are you hoping to hear from President Trump?
Well, before that, since you spoke about the financial sector and banking, I think one thing that we are all forgetting is that the structural changes that are taking place in the Indian economy are driving financialization of savings and formalization of the entire economy. And that's a huge change. We talk of demonetization, we talk of GST. Yeah. What that has done is brought in savings from the informal sector to the formal sector. If we look at the last 18 months, India has added $400 billion to financial savings. That is bank deposits, mutual funds, and life insurance. It's equal to the GDP of some of the countries. So that's the kind of momentum that we are seeing in the financial market.
But so what does that mean? Does that mean there's a lot more money to be invested, or does that structurally change the composition of the economy?
So I think it means two things. One is that there is a lot more money that can be invested, and that's why you're seeing that even in the capital markets, the IPOs, the primary issuances are all actually growing, and we've done much more than what we had done in the past many years. And it also means that as the money which was earlier not part of the formal economy, as the because of GST, the small entrepreneurs start paying taxes, they route their transactions through bank accounts. Many entities, many parts of the economy that were not bankable so far become bankable. So that creates a multiplier impact on its own on the economy.
Mrs. Kochhar, what is the biggest risk to the Indian economy? I mean, we're seeing several major banks, central banks moving at the same time. Can an economy like India withstand understand such a move?
So I think, the fact that globally interest rates would go up is a big development, and it's not, one cannot say that any economy will remain totally insulated from there. But having said that, I think what is important to note is that India has certain inherent strengths which gives it the resilience to be able to cope through that period much better. The strengths are that there is a strong underlying demand. The strengths are, therefore, the strong underlying demand would lead to capacity utilizations and therefore the need to create capacity. So I think it is that driver that would give the resilience to the Indian economy more than many other economies.
What do you make of Bitcoin? Do you look at Bitcoin? Is there demand from Bitcoin? Is your bank looking at it?
Since it's not regulated, the banks actually do not operate in it at all. But what we look at is the underlying blockchain technology. I think blockchain technology is something that we believe is a very strong technology for our trade transactions, for our global trade transactions. Actually, we are setting some of the innovative practices to actually use blockchain for some of those trade transactions.